It's very interesting because I do a lot of networking, and wherever I go, I never meet podcast booking agents. I know there are like many out there, but I don't really meet the competition. It's really interesting. Maybe I'm just lucky with my networking groups because some people just telling me like, I never heard about this service. Like, is that a real job or is that a real business model?
6 figures is a testimony. That is So hello everybody, welcome to the Be Yourself podcast, the podcast on expressing our true selves. Today I have Noemi Beres, who is a co-owner of Podcast Connections. She helps entrepreneurs to share knowledge and enrich people's life through connections. Hi Noemi, how are you?
Hi Sergey, it's lovely to see you. I'm very well, thank you.
We've just been talking off the record how hot it is. So you live in Cyprus, if I'm not mistaken?
That's correct. Yeah, it's hot. It's hot here too.
Hot, but people still do business, right?
Right. Yeah, we have to work no matter what. So yeah, I mean we have.
So I'm always curious to know about the background of my guests. Well, first of all, I gotta tell that we are in a way colleagues because we both sort of connected our lives with such a wonderful format as podcasts. I help people to produce videos. We have a team of video editors, and you help people, influencers, entrepreneurs to actually get on podcasts. And how did you get into this such a young yet really vibrant market and industry? How did it all start for you? How did you wind up doing what you're doing, Noemi?
Well, it was a completely and utterly accidental thing that happened to me, as usually happens to entrepreneurs, and we just end up doing something that we haven't planned. So I worked in the travel industry, in the online travel industry for how many years? My gosh, I became an entrepreneur in 2007. And then, for 13 years, actually, I worked in that. With my husband, we started a company and we were the first car rental brokers in Hungary, like for Hungarian customers. So that was fun. I was doing social media marketing, travel writing, blogging, everything, you name it. As a solopreneur does it most of the time. But then COVID hit, the pandemic hit, and 2020, that whole travel industry collapsed. We were told that, it's going to continue in a couple of days and everything's going to be fine. And it took a couple of years till it get back to its feet. So we had to figure out and we had to pivot. We had to find another solution, another business model to help us to basically pay the bills. So luckily we had an Irish mentor, because we lived in Ireland before Cyprus for 7 years. And he told us that, guys, you should start something in the podcasting business, in the podcasting world, because it's booming. With COVID, everybody started a podcast, already had one, or, were planning to have a podcast. So, okay, let's do it. So
who was this guy again?
His name is Steven, and he is like kind of an e-commerce genius, but it also in the podcasting world. He was doing podcast guesting way before many other people in Europe. So, okay. And he saw the results, and he saw how important it is to use this marketing strategy, this long-term marketing strategy. So he convinced us, and from one day to another, basically we started a podcast booking agency. I had no clue about it, and I had basically nothing to do with it. I didn't even listen to podcasts before 2020, to be honest with you. So it was learn as you go for me, 100%. And we started to work with e-commerce clients, just e-com. That was our first niche, and female entrepreneurs from the US. And that's how it all started.
Okay. So did he introduce you to the first clients by any chance?
No, he didn't. No, he had a program, and we completed his program, his course on how to run a podcast booking agency. it was like a low investment, fee, whatever. So we jumped on this opportunity, and my husband just made this website. He told me one night, like, okay, I'm going to prepare this website, and by tomorrow it's up and running, and we can just start getting the first clients. And we started to reach out to people. We did our research, who we want to work with. We approached them, and one of these ladies actually, who we approached, is still with us. So it's pretty cool.
This is one of those instances where the coach or someone who offered some courses, it actually worked for you. So
Yeah.
because there are a lot of people who they're constantly learning some new skills and they never get into doing anything.
Yeah.
While in this case, this guy actually gave you a blueprint
Yeah.
of a framework, at least of a workable, feasible business, which worked for you guys. Do you attribute, like, if you didn't have if you didn't find the customer right away, do you think you would persevere, or do you think you would pass on this opportunity? What was in the cards for you at that time? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. Yeah, there was no other option. I mean, had to pay the bills. You had to pay our son's tuition and stuff like that, and so we had no other option. It had to work.
Had to work.
It had to work. There was no other option. I became an entrepreneur in 2007 in my late 20s. So for me, I never turned back. I never looked back to my old job, which was actually working in a call center in Ireland. And I said, like, okay, I don't want to have a boss. I just want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship or how to run a business. And again, learn as you go. And that was the same situation. But obviously, I had more experience in 2020. So yeah, I always think like that. So yeah, if you are persistent, if you're consistent, and you put the work in it, and it's not about 4-hour work week at the beginning, because you have to put the work in it. It's hard work. It was hard work. Plus it was COVID, and I basically a couple of months ago, like a half a year ago, I lost my dad to cancer. I lost my grandma to an accident. We lost our business, and my son was at home doing online schooling. Plus, we were setting up a new business. So it was a lot going on, in 2019 and early 2020. So yeah, there was no other option. It had to work.
Social capital is gold now, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And you are someone who's helping people to obtain these incredibly valuable social connections. Was it obvious for you? Was the market obvious for you? Did you estimate the size of the market? What was the thinking process for you and the husband when you were choosing what to do next, outside of this guy giving you this hint?
I mean, it was a great opportunity because it was low investment. So you didn't have to have like cash, or you didn't have to have too much money to start this business. Because if you start a franchise, if you start something else, you always need to have like a bigger investment.
Or a product,
or
right?
a product or a service or whatever. But we didn't have time to figure that out. So we had this blueprint. It was easy to start. I mean, I had my communication skills. He had his marketing skills. So we put these two together, and okay, let's do it. Like we have to work on this. And yeah, and it worked. It worked out.
Okay. So now you've been doing this for how many years?
This is our 4th year. Yeah, we just celebrated our 4th anniversary of the business in April. So yeah.
How many customers do you have?
Right now we have like 22, 23, I think. Yeah, as today, and we actually reached the 6-figure this year, the 4th year. So which was good
Hooray.
because yay, I know it was hard work, but thanks to our business coach and thanks to the hard work we put in also.
Okay, what do you think is the competitive edge that you have? Because obviously, if this guy offered this as a ready business, there might be a lot of people who are doing the same, right? Tell me about the competitive landscape and how do you actually set yourself apart from your competition?
That's a great question, very complex one. Thank you. Well,
we have time.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is that because, as you mentioned at the beginning, like 80% of the people who started this course never finished it and never did anything with it. I guess there were like 20%. There was 20% who actually did something in the business out of these people. They just put the money in, they just paid it, but they never really completed it and never really got into it. And that happens always with courses, with online courses. So there's only a handful, there was always a handful of people who actually finish that and do something with the business. And I know a few people from the group who finished it and they still have the business, but it's only a handful. It's very interesting because I do a lot of networking, and wherever I go, I never meet podcast booking agents. So it's I know there are like many out there, but I don't really meet the competition. So it's really interesting. Maybe I'm just lucky with my networking groups, because some people just telling me like, I never heard about this service. Like, is that a real job or is that a real business model? It's like, yeah, I mean, it pays a bill.
It is 6 figures is a testimony that is.
Yeah, it works. So yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, yeah, there are big podcast booking agencies in the US. They started maybe 10, 15 years ago. So they are the market leaders. But what I think we are different from them, that we really, I love working with people who just starting out with podcast guesting. There are some podcast booking agencies, they focus on 6-7 figure clients. You have to be just laser focused on those people. But for me, I love working with someone who's starting out and to help them, maybe to hold their hands and lead them and help them to be better guests. I think for me, it's important. So I don't know. We are different, and I really love working with these people. And sometimes working with people that like 60 plus or even 70 plus and doing podcast guesting is pretty amazing. I have a few amazing clients who are in that age group, and they're doing fantastically. And I always love working with older people. I think I have the patience, and I just really appreciate what they've done. And they are, they can share their knowledge and wisdom to the world, because that's cool that if you're an entrepreneur and in your 20s, but when you are 60 or like, late 50s or even 70, you have so much experience and so much wisdom to share that you can compare. And we can't just downright these people because they are pretty amazing. So they have a lot of knowledge to share. So yeah, I think we're still in that phase that we are a boutique agency. So we really help our clients to thrive and be there for them. If they want, they can jump on a call. We can talk to them, not to our virtual assistants or to our colleagues, but I'm there for them. So if they want to talk to me, I'm happy to chat with them and help with them with anything.
I'm all in for retaining this personal touch with the customers. I even can go so far as saying that I want my agency, my business, to have that number of clients that I can personally, manage or at least have some connection on a monthly basis. Even though we are all, not we are all, but corporate world is chasing numbers.
Yeah.
Scaling. I have doubts about that. I think that you can live a really good, poised, balanced life with maybe limited number, but your beloved, loyal customers who you just gel together and who you have great synergy with. And that's just a matter of perspective of what you want. But it comes with age. And I totally agree that for older people, giving them the opportunity to speak is invaluable. Is just great. I had Alan Langer on my podcast recently. He runs the Sales Academy, a very nice guy, who's about helping instead of selling. This is his motto. Help people. First help. Don't think about your commission. Don't think about your sales plan. But he said that you first have to understand your customer avatar, understand your customer profile. That you at this point understand who your customers are and what they need from you, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And for me, the customer avatar is really important. But on the other note, like a shout out to Bob Berg's community. Like he's the author of the Go Giver book, and Bob is my mentor and my friend, and he really taught me how to build relationships and lead with value and give back to the community, give back to people, because once you do that, everything will come back to you. And that's what happened. I joined the community, and there were so many Go Giver community members joined me and started to work with me just from one day to another, or they started to referring me people. So it was like a kind of domino effect. So if you put that energy, if you put that value into your work, and you're building like real authentic relationships, it will always help you to drive your business and to thrive. I think that's my motto.
So, podcasting is a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
We can put it on the as a tagline to this video. Not all people understand that in our day and age, not having a podcast as a public figure is almost missing out on the basics, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
What would be your advice? Is it starting a podcast, or is it appearing as a guest on some podcasts in the beginning? Or maybe you feel like you might not start a podcast at all, but then you'll have to be really active applying for. Maybe you can tell me about the customer journey and the ways. How easy is that for a person who's not super recognizable and doesn't have a lot of eyeballs around him to get on the podcast?
Yeah, I think it's so much easier to get on a podcast or be a podcast guest than to start a podcast. I think. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that would be the first step. Maybe you're thinking about to start a podcast, so you can get on other people's podcast and see how they do it, learn from them. I think that's a great opportunity
from the technical perspective. Also,
exactly,
all things.
Absolutely, and it's cost effective too, because running a podcast, it costs money. I mean, you have to edit it. Maybe you need people to do that, or maybe you have to spend your own time and money on that. So, plus, I mean, I know a lot of hosts, and they put a lot of effort and energy and money into just running the podcast. But I mean, once you're a podcast guest, you can get on other people's podcasts, so it's very cost effective, and you can build your brand, you can build your authority, you can start, shaping up your story and telling to the world and share your knowledge with these podcasts. So I think that's really important. So you can just start it out, especially if you don't have any experience with it. I don't think it's a good idea to jump on and it's like, okay, let's do a podcast. I saw that before, and there's a lot of podcasts that started maybe in 2020, but they stopped. And especially when COVID stopped, everybody went back to work, and they just didn't have that kind of persistency and resilience to continue, because it's rinse and repeat. You have to get those guests on, and it's a lot of work. So I would suggest, like, if you want to start out, just start with guesting, and then you can always start a podcast. Like, it's basically on my agenda too. It's not, I wouldn't say bucket list, but on my to-do list. Like, I would love to have a podcast one day, but for me, because I know a lot of hosts, it's just so easy to get on shows and share my knowledge, share my story.
Let's say I have a friend. Let's call her Priscilla. She's a psychologist. And she's thinking, she wants to be a guest on other people's podcasts. But at the same time, she's thinking about starting her own podcast. What are the ways for you to ensure that if you were to get her on someone's podcast, that it wouldn't feel fake?
Yeah, very great question.
Because we all want this to feel like it's a natural and authentic desire of two people to talk together. While
Absolutely.
In reality, you help this to happen. So how do we navigate that?
We have to do our research. It has to be really a deep research. What's the best fit for you? You have to find the right podcast where you can share your story openly. I think that's really important, because if you don't have that kind of vibe and you don't align with the show, you can't really express yourself freely, and you're not so open. And the whole point of a podcast interview is like a human conversation. It's just like we get into together, maybe we're having a coffee and we're chatting. And I think plus we're sharing our knowledge, we're sharing our story, but it's a very amicable, nice conversation between two people. So for her, we would find the right show, the right podcast that really aligns with her style, with her message, and where she can be vulnerable, when she can open up. And I think it's a good thing when you run a podcast booking agency, for example, that you can even do mock interviews and figure out how Priscilla would do during an interview. And we can help her with our advice, how to improve her podcast guesting experience. So that's pretty important when it comes to that. So, and finding the right match for the people, especially when you work with a podcast host for a long time, you know who they need and what kind of style they have. So they know exactly what's the right match for them. So if we're having like a very like kind of dude podcast, you wouldn't put maybe a 70-year-old lady there on that show. So I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But like, yeah, you can just fine tune when it comes to picking the right host and the right guest, for sure.
So you have good relationships with podcasters,
yes.
And pretty much their taste and their requirements, and you just in a way you're a matchmaker. I remember on Valentine's Day, it was really symbolic. On the Valentine's Day had Marnie Kagan. If you guys haven't seen this episode with Marnie, she's from New York and she's a professional matchmaker.
Right.
And in a way, you also kind of connect people. And I can testify from my own experience that the connection that you establish with someone who you talk to 1 hour with is remarkable. I mean,
yes.
Regardless of which end you're on. I personally believe that you have a little bit of an edge as a podcaster because you're asking questions and your guest, there's something about other people listening to you. You just tend to love people listening to you, and you have sympathy for someone who asks questions. So, but yeah, absolutely, it's something that we should take into account. Let me ask you about the personal qualities that allow you to run this business, and do you even believe in work-life balance? Here's the question for you, because I mean, or is it like gelled together for you? Is it like a one mixture?
Well, I've been working remotely since 2007, so way before COVID. So I don't believe in work-life balance. What I believe is in harmony. So you can live in harmony with both, and it's really hard to find balance. Like, especially when you work from home, you have a home office, and you're just popping in and out, and you have to find that kind of harmony, especially if you have a kid, if you have a child, if you have a family, you have to somehow put it together. And I'm not saying it's always perfect, because it's not. Sometimes you overwork, sometimes you're close to burnout, happens. And you just have to find that kind of harmony. But in order to have that kind of harmony, you really have to practice self-care. And I think that's really important for me.
Tell me more.
Like, I start my day with meditation. After I send my son to school, and lunchbox and everything is done. So I start my day with exercise. Like, I'm doing my weights, I'm doing my exercise bike, then I'm doing my meditation, journaling. So that's so important to me, and that's how I can start my day. And
do you do morning pages or something?
Morning pages, like
all the thoughts that. What is journaling? What do you put in?
Journaling for me is I'm more into law of attraction. So for me, it's like anything with positive affirmations and anything that I want to achieve, like you write it down. So that's kind of my morning schedule, but I do it almost every day. So I think that's a great way to start. And also meditating, that's really important. And reading a little bit, because I'm a bookworm and I love reading. For example, self-help books or self-improvement books or Bob Burg's other books. So for me, it's like, even if I just read a few pages about anything, and it starts my day. And I'm also learning languages every morning, like I'm learning Greek and Spanish. So I do Duolingo, like one lesson each every single morning, because I can't lose my streak. So so that's my morning routine. So that's how I set up my myself for to be productive and to be present and to work better and to be present for my family, for my clients, and to do better every day.
So you sharpen up your brain from the very morning, right?
Yes.
Interesting. Because for me, like, and I borrowed this advice from Tim Ferriss. He was on Chris Williamson Modern Wisdom podcast. Tim is a highly productive guy. One of the
Yes,
he like
absolutely.
considered
Yeah.
to
I
be
read
the
his
most
books.
productive
Yes,
person.
absolutely. Yeah.
And he actually starts his morning without employing his brain a lot. He doesn't want to occupy his brain with a lot of data or even like anything that can bring some sort of dosage of anxiety, you know.
Yeah.
And and for me, this also became like such a great solution. When you get up, you don't check your phone, you don't check your notifications, and you just let yourself to settle in, you
Yeah.
know. And then that it just gives me I mean this silence in the beginning of the day just do wonders for me. And I think this is just an illustration that we are all really individual and we all have to find what works best for us. And on this note of work-life balance, I also don't believe in it. I feel that trying to put person inside of some sort of a office building and say, hey, you gotta be most productive now is just dystopia. It's stupid. I mean, we all
I agree.
have our own productivity hours, right? And I don't even know. I think as you said, people still come back. They came back to their offices because there's something about the control that management want to have over people. On this point, tell me about your team. How do you motivate your team? Who do you have on your team? And how do you hire maybe even?
Yeah, I mean, we started to hire, the first employee, like the first virtual assistant we started to work with, it happened like almost 3 years ago. She's been with us since then, which is good because, it's it's hard to find assistants and that are actually stick to you for many, many years. But luckily we knew her, and so through other acquaintances, so it was great. And we have like weekly meetings and weekly catch-ups, especially with her because she's the one who we started to work with solely first. And she's amazing. And she's like, I'm not saying like, we are like friends. So we know about her. If there are any struggles, we know about her struggles. If there are any sickness, we know about that too. So we try and support her as much as we can. She's in South Africa. And then we had two other ladies. One of them is in Pakistan. The other one is in Colombia. And now we only have the lady from Pakistan, and she's also amazing. And I didn't even have to find her because she found us. She reached out on LinkedIn, and she was pretty amazing. And I said, okay, let's have a chat. And turns out she's an amazing virtual assistant. She's an amazing podcast booking agent as well because she's doing booking for us.
What do they do? They're multifunctional. What are their responsibilities?
They're doing researches and they're reaching out to podcast hosts, reaching out, scheduling. So obviously we have a lot of people we need to provide them with a podcast. So we need them to do research. Research is really, really time consuming when it comes to podcast guesting. And also scheduling podcasts. I mean, that's also a time-consuming thing when you have a lot of clients. So they do a lot of different tasks. Yeah,
I think that being able to run a company with not that many employees is such a delicate sort of art. You can do that. I think that it's really amazing when you don't have that many people on your team, but you have the ultimate trust.
Yeah.
And you employ people from all around the world, given opportunities to fellows maybe not from such like good economies, which always feels like a contribution.
Yeah.
So I feel like you feel great about giving these girls a chance to work.
Absolutely, and we're planning actually to employ more. Probably during the autumn time, we'll hire more people and bring more people on our team. So yeah, that's in the plan as well.
Do you have a platform? Where does everything happen? Where is all the juice happening? Like, do you have some, like, if I was to become your customer, do I have a dashboard or something on the side, or how does it work?
No, it's more, with the clients. We had more like email communication. So that's and Zoom, obviously. So we can jump on a call, we can have a chat, and emails that like still work. And because we are in different time zones, it's practical because by the time they wake up, they already have one or two podcast interviews in their mailbox. So it works because we are ahead of them. We are 7 hours ahead of Eastern time, so it's Eastern time zone, so that works for them as well. Although I have longer days, so yeah, because of that.
I once had a lady who now lives in the United States, and she runs a community of women entrepreneurs, specifically coming from Ukraine and Belarus, so who are immigrants there.
Yeah.
And she's a super structured lady. She's super disciplined lady, well organized. And she also runs this business with her soon to become husband. So you feel what I'm about to ask you, right?
Yeah.
Like they constructed their marriage. I was really shocked by this, but they constructed their marriage as sort of a business project. I'm not kidding. I mean, they actually really disciplined in how they go about their personal life and their family life. Tell me about your experience running a business with your husband. Are there any, sort of doubts or questions? How do you navigate that? And would you advise people to go in business and start a business with their soulmates?
No, don't.
End of the segment. No, tell me.
I will
it
tell
can
you
be
more. We almost 25. We have almost 25-year marriage basically under our belt. So we became business partners since I think 2007, 2008. First, I became an entrepreneur. Then my husband joined me around 2008, 9. But I have to say it's not easy to navigate this. Like, who is who in the business? Who is who in the relationship? And to figure it out, you need a lot of patience and everything else to navigate that. I mean, in our first business, it was, I was doing something else, and he had other. He was responsible for other stuff as well. So it's good because if you can balance that, so you're not stepping on each other's toes, that works. If you do that, you have to think about that if you want to go to do business with your spouse, because it's not easy. I remember I had this business women networking event in Ireland that was like 10 plus years ago, 15 plus years ago. And we met with all these ladies and they told me, so what do you do? It's like, I work with my husband. It's like, oh my God, how do you do that? I couldn't be with him 24/7, home office, everything. Yeah. And it takes effort, and it takes a lot of work to work together, for sure, because there will be tough times, there will be tough talks about business, and how can you divide? I'm a husband now, I'm a wife now, I know I'm the boss now, or I'm not the boss, or you're finding these roles and figuring them out. It's not easy. So I would say sometimes it's just easier not to work together. And I asked for example, my business coach, it's like, have you ever worked together with your spouse? And she did, and she said never again. So it happens, but we've been doing it for many years. So obviously it can work, but it has its challenges. Let's put it that way and diplomatically.
Well, Tatiana, who introduced us,
Yes.
Hi, if you're listening, if you're watching.
Yes, I remember her. I was on her show.
She works with Arnold, her husband, and they told me that they're able to turn it off and turn it on. They are able to switch roles. Now parents, or now we are a sexy couple. Now you're a man, I'm a woman. Like, so it's interesting how they're able to just jump from one role to another. But it takes years of practice. I don't
Absolutely,
think
it takes
right
time.
off the
Yeah,
gate.
yeah. And if you're not into that, so just don't do it. If you don't want to risk your relationship, and it's important to you, maybe like don't work together. You can have on your own businesses, but maybe don't work together and just do like that. I mean, I've seen that before, and it really depends on the personalities, and it really depends on the dynamic you have between you two. So yeah, you can switch it on, but it takes work.
Friendship is the same thing.
Yeah.
I think, like, if you have good relationships, like close friendship with someone, maybe you don't want to start a business together.
No, don't, never.
If you become friends as a result of the business, right? That's a whole different story.
That's different.
But if you're friends in the first place, but you always, trust is the most valuable currency, obviously. On the flip side of what you're saying, there's always trust between you guys.
Absolutely,
so you know that you can always be super transparent and stuff like that. Okay, one of my stories in life is understanding the hard way that money can't buy you happiness. Are you guys looking at the monetary metrics as a driving force for you? How important it is to grow from month to month or from season to season? And you can answer me both from the business perspective and your personal perspective. Do you feel like, as human beings, we always want to measure everything, right?
Yeah.
What we can't measure, especially our mental state, you can't measure if I feel better today than yesterday, right? But you can always measure if I have more money in my pocket than I have yesterday. That's why people are so obsessed about measurement.
Yes.
So tell me about how do you look at this from the business and the personal perspective, and how important do you think money in general for a family unit and for a business unit?
I mean, to have a good life, to live a good life in a nice country like Cyprus, you need money, and I can't lie about that. I mean, you have to secure yourself, your future, your kids' future, your child's future. I think that's really important, and it's part of it. But it's very interesting because one of the other days I was watching a video from Laila Hormozi, and she's like how laser focused she is about money and measuring, because that's how you can reach your goals. And for me, it's like I'm not really into measuring that much. I try to find that balance, the middle way between. So I'm not going to measure things daily because that's just too much pressure on me. That's how I feel. And I'm not saying it's like, do whatever we do and then we earn whatever we earn. No, I mean, we do measure things, but just to finding that right balance and not checking your bank account and not checking every single digit all the time. It's pressure for me. For other people, it may be their help or their support. Like that's the way they lead business and lead life, but not for me. It's definitely not only money that inspires me. That inspires me to help people to live like a happier life and to have experiences and have quality life, practice self-care. And yes, of course, we need money for that. That's really, really important. And I'm just actually reading a book right now, like every morning. It's Ken Honda's Happy Money. And I mean, the way he talks about these things, that like how you can have a balanced life. And once you have a balanced life and when you can have a happier life, money will come to you. Money will follow you too. So if you are just so
it's like a byproduct.
Exactly, it's a byproduct. And if you just want to always just more and more, and that won't help you to get more money in your life. It's just a pressure on you, and it drives your mind and drives your whole life around money, and it shouldn't be like that. Money is just a tool.
Yeah, I like how Simon Sinek puts it. He described us to be a car, and there is a destination where we're gonna get. Money is just the fuel. So exactly. you need to go somewhere, but I will ask you about the purpose, but I think ideally we can have the purpose is a good thing because you understand where you want to get to. But I think there is no perfect recipe for purpose. I mean, it could be spiritual. It can be like somewhere something beyond our life at all.
Yeah.
You know, so have you ever considered have you ever thought about the purpose of your business?
Yeah, when you first start, you obviously you think about to earn money and pay the bills. That was the first purpose. So I wouldn't lie
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that because
yeah.
that's
There's no shame
important.
in this.
Yeah,
Everyone's got.
exactly. Yeah, we got that. But then once you're there and once you reach six figure and seven figure and whatever figure, I mean, you need to have a purpose for sure. And for me, is really to be there for people and help them, because when I do podcast guesting, I don't only talk about like how to be a great guest, but I'm also an artist, and that's what I love to do. I'm really passionate about my art, and also helping people how to cope with stress, trauma, tragedies, anxiety with the help of art. So that's why I did courses on positive psychology, art therapy, color therapy. So for me, getting on podcast, for example, and helping people to cope with that kind of problem that I used to cope with during my dark hours, I think if I can just help one person, that's my goal, and I love doing that, and I love helping people to just get over their darkest hours, for example. And I love that, like, I can be just like a podcast booking agent, not just a businesswoman, but I can be an artist, and we can be so many different things at the same time.
What's your artistic outlet? What do you do as an artist?
I make mixed media collages. Like, these are hands-on collages in canvas. It's basically I sew my family's memories together. I using old photos, old postcards that I got as a child because I had like a postcard collection, and I use textiles and I sew everything together on a canvas. It's kind of a unique technique I use, and I don't really meet other crazy people who did that. So yeah, that's my thing. That's my jam. And yeah, I had a couple of group exhibitions before COVID and installations, and I really enjoyed it. I'm really passionate about that. And for example, for me, like running a podcast booking agency, helping people is one thing, and also that supports my art, and I can spend more time with my art and with organizing exhibitions and stuff like that. So that's kind of
Yeah.
my purpose in life.
That falls into the category of the name of my podcast, like be yourself, express yourself. And I'm yet to understand what is the ultimate expression of my potential in this world, but I think that I think the name of this guy who's an astrophysicist, a very popular guy now, what's his name? I don't remember, but yeah, so we're like a very sexy astrophysicist right now that everyone's talking about. He said that you always have to try new things, and when you try new things, sooner or later you'll find something where you feel like you're at the top of your game, or you're expressing something
Yeah.
inside of you. And for me, it's always been communication. Just be able to play with words, just to be able to play with emotions and inspire other people. It's been just like invaluable for me. Maybe you can tell me what is the vision of the world, because we're gonna wrap it up, and I'm just gonna ask you maybe to be the president of the world for like 1 minute, and I'm gonna ask you, what do you think this world needs now in these difficult times? We have wars, we have president assassination attempts, we have so many former presidents. I'm sorry. We have COVID, and like, what does this world need, in your opinion, as a remedy?
Yeah, more love and understanding, and peace. And that's all we need, and no wars. So there were too many wars like happening, like in my home, close to my home country in Ukraine, here in Israel. Like, again, it's almost like a neighboring country. So yeah, we just like more understanding and more love. I mean, if we would have that, and if we could just express ourselves and we would be just more conscious with our language, with the way we treat other people, that the way you want it to be treated. I mean, that would be just so important, and not this whole world that is split up, basically, in my home country, in the United States, in like so many places in the
Yeah.
world. And
A lot
we
of
could just
division.
like just to work together and be together and just do it together and not be divided by crazy stuff happening.
People want to be strongest, fastest, most powerful. So I think this thirst for power.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just something about like. I think Stephen Covey wrote in 7 Habits of the Most Efficient, Effective People
Yeah.
that there's enough of resources for everyone. We're not with this scarcity mentality is the
Yeah.
thing of the past. There's enough money, enough attention, enough resources for everybody. Yet still we think that we need to fight with our neighbor
Yeah.
to get somewhere. Yeah. Any last message that you want to leave our audience with, maybe with respect to your business or anything at all?
My motto in life is just keep going. So whatever I do, I always have this, I don't have a tattoo, but if I had one, and that would be tattooed on me. So just keep going. So whatever happens in life, and it can be, personal, financial, whatever tragedies or whatever like hardship happens, you can always keep going. There's always a solution. There's always other people you can rely on, and also persistency and consistency. So don't think that everything is an overnight success, especially if you're starting business and restarting another one. You're just being consistent and persistent, whatever you do in life, in personal life, in business. I think that's just really, really important, and keep that in mind. Because I know that a lot of the younger generation, they just want now and everything. And I know from my son, Gen Z, so it's it's hard for them. It's like we have to wait for things. Yeah, you have to. Sometimes you have to work for it and wait for it, and it will happen.
Yeah. That was Noemi Beres, guys.